Alright, I just wanted to make a quick video on my thoughts on Genesis 1. I'm going to make a couple fucking videos on different things that I have issues with as far as the accuracy of the Bible. And so we'll start at the beginning. Genesis 1. Here's the deal. I don't claim to know more than anybody else. I don't claim that I understand ancient languages. All I know is what's in front of me. I'll fucking spout off a couple little facts here and there about things that I've looked into, but other than that, we're all reading the same book. If you want to get into the whole, like, oh, you don't understand ancient Hebrew, maybe you fucking misinterpreted it or whatever, I'm not the one interpreting it. I'm looking to, like, professional scholars that know this shit that are interpreting it and fucking writing it down in English for me, and then I read it. Sometimes I verify that the structure of a word in ancient Hebrew is lining up with what, like, Google says that word means. And maybe Google's lying to me, I don't know. But to the best of my ability, to the fucking information that's available to me, this is what I've come to, right? So we'll just start off. Genesis 1. So that we're all on the same page here, let's lay it out. I'm gonna lay it out. So if you're reading something different, or if you interpret it different, then you could fucking put in the comments that I got this wrong. But basically, it's a 6-day creation model, right? And everybody rests on the fucking 7th day. But this is the way it's laid out in the book. Day 1, light's created. Day and night appear. Day 2, the sky, firmament, separates the waters. Don't even know what the fuck that means. Dry land appears on day 3, and plants are created. On day 4, sun, moon, stars created. Day 5, sea creatures and birds are created. And then day 6, land animals and humans created on day 6, right? So, here's where science, again, I don't claim to know, I'm not a fucking scientist, I'm just telling you, do a simple search, hear what the top scientists are saying about this shit, and this is what they're saying, right? So here's the problem on the first problem. Light appears before stars appear. So Genesis 1 has light being created before the existence of any celestial bodies. But according to astrophysics, light originates from first generation stars, population 3 stars, right? The universe, after the Big Bang, spent about roughly 380,000 years in the dark until atoms formed and light could travel, right? So stars formed hundreds of millions of years after that. There's no known mechanism in physics where light exists without a luminous source. So this is the first major scientific contradiction, right? Number 2, day and night before the sun. So Genesis describes evening and morning on day 1, day 2, and day 3. But scientifically, a day requires the Earth's rotation relative to the sun. So without the sun, you can't have an alternating light and darkness in a 24-hour cycle. This isn't like a poetic thing. The text literally talks about literal days. That creates a direct physical contradiction. Number 3, plants before the sun. So on day 3, plants are created, right? But solar physics come into play here. So Genesis places all plant life on Earth before the sun exists. So scientifically, we know that photosynthesis requires sunlight. Planetary climate and seasonal cycles require the sun. There's no feasible geophysical environment where plants could survive even minutes, let alone an entire day, without a star providing energy. So this is probably one of the most glaring scientific conflicts in the entire chapter. Problem 4, the firmament. It doesn't match anything in physics. We don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So Genesis describes a solid dome-like firmament separating the waters above and the waters below. Here's the problem. There's no solid dome surrounding the earth. There's no waters above the sky. The ancient Hebrew concept matches many of the Near Eastern cosmologies that imagine a hard dome holding back cosmic water. But what we do know is that the Earth's sky is an atmosphere of gases. Outer space is a vacuum. There's no structure physically resembling a firmament. So this part of Genesis reflects like ancient cosmology, not scientific reality. Um, Problem 5. The birds before land animals? So in day 5, that's what happens, but that's not what evolution tells us, right? So Genesis has birds being created along with fish on day 5. Land animals created after that on day 6. But evolutionary biology shows that birds evolved from land-dwelling dinosaurs. Birds came after land animals. Marine animals evolved even earlier than that. But birds definitely did not precede mammals or reptiles. This is a clean mismatch with the fossil record, too. Number 6. The order of life in Genesis doesn't match the evolutionary timeline. So in Genesis, this is the order that it has, right? In Genesis 1, it has plants, sea animals, birds, land animals, and then humans. Scientific order is single-celled life, marine life, land plants, then land animals, then dinosaurs, then birds, then mammals, then humans. So Genesis has an order that sometimes looks vaguely similar, but the contradictions are so big. It's like plants appear before the sun. That's impossible. Birds before land animals. Wrong. Humans appear the same day as other land animals, but the timeline is off by like millions of years. So it just doesn't line up. Um, Number 7. Humanity created fully formed versus evolutionary evidence. So Genesis says that humans appeared suddenly, right? But science shows that anatomically modern humans evolved gradually over roughly 300,000 years. That's arguable, but still, that's a lot, right? We share DNA with earlier hominids and other animals. So also, fossil and genetic evidence confirms a slow branching evolutionary process. There's no sudden appearance here. Number 8. A 6-day universe versus a 13.8 billion year universe. So Genesis describes that all creation happened in 6 literal days. Scientific measurements from cosmic microwave background radiation, red shifting of galaxies, radioactive decay, stellar evolution. They all independently show that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old, with Earth forming around 4.5 billion years ago. So nothing in geology or physics matches a 6-day time frame. So all of this stuff is like, are Genesis 1 and scientific cosmology compatible? No. Not literally. You can interpret Genesis metaphorically, poetically, symbolically, but if you take the text as a chronological, physical account of how the universe actually formed, it contradicts essentially every field in modern science: astronomy, cosmology, geology, evolutionary biology, physics, planetary science. And this is even before we even compare Genesis 1 to Genesis 2, which has a bunch of contradictions in itself. So if you look at what you see there in that book, it is, to me, like if you read it and you go, nope, lines up. All right, cool. I get that. But what I look at and what I read, what it seems to me is ancient, ignorant humans that were trying to describe the world around them, how it came about, and they were just coming up with ideas, right? And they got it all wrong. They got a lot of it wrong. The separation, the firmament separating the skies, the water in the skies and the water in the land. Like, if we didn't know what the fuck that was during the day and it was just a bright blue, sky, what do we know that's blue? Water. Water bodies look blue. Well, look blue. All right, that's water up there. Well, why is that water not falling on us? You know, at the time they didn't have a telescope, they didn't have a microscope, they didn't know germ theory, they didn't know like they didn't have the tools to like really describe this stuff. So this is like, you know, their best attempt, and that makes sense. That this is like this is exactly what you would expect to hear from people writing this shit 4 or 5 thousand years ago. Like, I read all this, and I am not convinced that this is the inerrant word of God. I read all this, and that's what I think. I'm not convinced that, but this doesn't. That all of this that I'm talking about, this doesn't mean like I'm not saying that this proves God doesn't exist. It's one of the reasons that leads me to be not convinced that God exists. Um, but it doesn't have to. Like, as if you are a Christian and you're like, oh, no, I believe in the Bible. I believe that Jesus died on the cross, rose from the dead, you know, blah blah blah. If you believe all that, you could still believe all that. But you have to look at this text specifically, Genesis 1, and go, oh, that you're correct, Anthony. That doesn't line up with what we currently know. So that's where it gets frustrating, is whenever you talk to somebody that they just cannot, they have this dogmatic, rigid belief in a text that was written so long ago, and they can't go, oh, well, we have new information that makes, you know what I mean? We have new information. That's the old information. You have to be able to move on from that. You could still say God exists, Jesus is a thing, whatever, but you have to be able to look at this text and go, doesn't line up. I'm still a Christian, but that doesn't line up. I guess I don't know, that's something I can. But when you say, no, 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 it lines up, and then you try to finagle the words or interject stuff, you know, like, I had, you know, on my podcast, I had my Uncle Randy was like, hey, if you read the NIV, this is an explanation on it's a past tense, you know, so there's a word that was added. The problem is that the NIV was written in 1978 by a group of 15 Christians who were interpreting, right? And so they're translating. So it's like, not that long ago, like, this NIV was written, and they added that word. Read any book before that, most books before that, even the ancient stuff, there wasn't a past tense there. So that's what's happening over years. People change the text, people add stuff, or even like, it's just to slightly nudge somebody to the ability to reconcile certain things. But when you confront everything that nobody, as a Christian or as a believer in the Old Testament, nobody confronts any kind of contradiction or issue that is apparent and abundant and like right in your face, I think that's weird. I think you should. I think we should all be challenging everything that we learn and everything we know. Challenge me. Let me know in the comments that I got this all wrong, and tell me why. But also, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. I'd appreciate it.